we are going to take a closer look at short sales. A short sale happens when the seller owes more on the property than the property is worth in the current market. For example, Mr. Seller owes $250,000 on his current home and he needs to move. However, the best you can come up with on your comps and your CMAs is a recent sale of $220,000. So that leaves him with more than $30,000 because he's also got to cover commissions and closing costs. And I am going to assume that Mr. Seller probably doesn't have $40,000 tucked away to cover the deficit. So if he doesn't have the cash to cover it, including the commissions and the closing costs, he will have to get approval from the bank to sell the property at a price that is lower than what is owed on the property. So the funds received will be short of what is owed, hence giving it the name short sale. So the seller in this situation needs to be aware that a short sale can affect their credit score. It can have tax implications, and that all the lien holders attached to the property will have to approve the sale and the amount of money that they will get from the end of that sale. So in order to do this, it's all covered in the short sale addendum to the standard listing agreement, and you will need to add this to your listing documents along with the short sale commission form to protect your commission, and we'll go over that in just a minute. So here is your standard listing agreement. On page 4 under letter K, there are exceptions to the seller being able to transfer the property without obtaining the consent or approval of another party. Little I is what you would check in this situation. The seller represents the sale is a short sale, in which event the Rain short sale addendum to the standard listing agreement and other addenda is attached to and incorporated into this agreement. Okay, so you need to make sure that this is checked on your standard listing agreement if you're doing the short sale. Then you need this additional document. It's the short sale addendum to the standard listing agreement. The top is filled out to match the top of your standard listing agreement. This is acknowledging the short sale, and this is all the things that the seller needs to be aware of: is the credit considerations, tax considerations, lien holder considerations, and other options regarding a short sale. So sellers advised to explore all available payment options with the lien holder, and that this short sale is kind of a last-ditch effort to release the property. Then the second part is the seller authorizing the listing firm to communicate with the lien holders regarding the details of the request to release the liens. Listing firm is not liable for the lien holder's decisions and the seller's duties to cooperate with the listing firm's efforts to negotiate. Well, we don't want you doing the negotiating. Okay, the sellers are going to have a lot of paperwork to fill out for their lien holder. There is all kinds of explanations and tax records and budgets and receipts and things that are going to be required to be turned over to the lien holder. If you want to take a short sale listing, please contact Hanger Law, and here's their phone number, and they will help with the paperwork and the negotiation and handle the closing for the seller. They know what they're doing, and they are your best resource in getting a short sale approved by the bank and closed. So please, please, please do not try to go it alone. You need to reach out to a mentor at a minimum, and you really need to have the seller secure the services of Hanger Law and handle the negotiations and dealing with the bank for this short sale. Every short sale is different. There is no hard timeline for when approvals will happen. Each lien holder has their own process. And keep in mind that we're dealing with a bank. They only work banking hours on business banking days. So things tend to take a lot longer because banking hours and business banking days. And each step of the process has a certain number of days allocated to its completion. So if the contract gets to the lien holder on day one, and the first part of the process has 10 days to complete their overview, that's 10 business banking days. So if there are weekends and holidays in there, they do not count towards that timeline. So it can easily take 45 to 60 days for the initial contract to get through all of its steps in the process and get even any response from the lien holder, which might have a counteroffer or a different price to send back to the buyer. So everybody within the transaction needs to understand that the timeline is fluid. There is nothing hard and fast about when any of this will for sure happen. Okay. So buyers going into this need to have a place to call home for 90 to 120 days while they wait for the approvals. They need to be patient, and they need to not have an immediate need for a place to live. So again, this short sale addendum goes with your standard listing agreement if you are working with a seller. The final piece, if you are the listing agent, is this short sale offer of compensation to the selling firm. In a typical listing agreement or a listing arrangement, you have agreed to take a certain amount, and we're going to say 6% from the seller for commission. And you have agreed to share that commission at 3% to a cooperating broker. So typically that broker comes in expecting a 3% or whatever is listed in the MLS commission at the time of the settlement. Well, the bank may or may not approve that full 6% commission. So if you do not have this short sale compensation form filled out and attached to your listing in RAIN, whatever amount is listed in the MLS is absolutely what you have to share with the cooperating broker. So let's say the bank comes back and says, we're only going to authorize 4.5% for total commissions for this deal so that we can meet our people's bottom line so that we can get this deal closed. Well, if you don't have this form, the MLS says you're sharing 3%, which means now you get 1.5% and the cooperating broker gets 3%. This form filled out properly, you're going to put the seller's names, Keller Williams Realty, the full property address. The rest of this will be filled in by the selling agent. You're going to put in here whatever is on your SAER that you have agreed to share with a cooperating broker and is what is currently listed in the MLS. It's typically going to be a 3%, maybe 2%. Then you're going to add that the listing and selling firm shall split bank approved commission 50-50 if less than a total of 6%. Therefore, if the bank comes back and says, we are giving an authorization for a total of 4.5% commission, instead of only getting 1.5%, you're now splitting that, and each side is getting 2.25%. It's a much better deal in the end. But that only works if this document is attached to your listing in RAIN and is available to the cooperating agent at the time of showing. So you need to make sure that this is attached to the listing in RAIN. Okay, I cannot emphasize that enough. You're going to be out commission if you do not have this attached to the listing in RAIN. There is never a guarantee that the bank is going to uphold that 6% that you agreed to with the seller. Okay. So if you've got a buyer and you're looking at short sales, this is how it's going to show in the MLS. It's going to show under disclosures that there's a short or compromise sale. and and hopefully there will, if that commission adjustment form is not attached to this listing, you need to make sure as the selling agent, you have a copy of this MLS printout, time and date stamped, the time of your showing or the day of your showing. I know it probably won't match the time, but on the day you show the property, you need to have something that shows what the cooperating commission is. Okay. You need to have that with your name and your time and date stamp showing the date you printed this out and what the commission was on that day. Okay. And here it says 3%. So if there is not a short sale compensation form attached to this listing, you get that full 3% regardless of what the bank comes back with. Protect your commission. Okay. If you're on the listing side, it's more important to protect it, but also on the buying side, on the selling side, you want to make sure that you're not shorted when the bank comes back with a lesser amount. You can pull this out and say, on the day we showed it, there was nothing attached to the listing in RAIN, and here is what the commission was offered. Okay. If your buyer wants to purchase a short sale, this document is attached to your standard purchase agreement. You're going to have this whole section match the top of the purchase agreement. Some information about how the process works for the buyer. The seller is working on his obligations to obtain approvals. And you have to fill in a date here for the buyer to receive written evidence of the approval or not approval from the lien holder. This date should be a minimum of 30 to 45 days out, unless the listing agent tells you they already have short sale approval pending an approved contract. But even so, this contract is not yet approved. It still has to go through a bit of a process, even though the seller has jumped through all the hoops to get the sale, the acknowledgement of a short sale approved. This particular contract has not yet been approved. So I still wouldn't plan on less than 30 days. Okay, so 30 to 45 days at a minimum for that approval to come back from the bank, because remember, business banking days and banking hours are how this is handled. So once you decide on that, again, 30 to 45 days, then you address these other time frames. For the inspection, we're going to alter the body of the contract. You're still going to fill in your normal time frames. However, when you do this, you're going to have the buyer initial that you're actually going to do your home inspection from, and it'll be the 10 or 14 days that you put in the contract, but it's measured from the date the seller delivers the written evidence of the approval. So if on the 1st you get the written evidence of the approval and you have 10 days on your property inspection contingency addendum, you now have 10 days from the date of that evidence, written evidence, to get your inspection done and get your PICRA over to the seller. Okay. Now you need to also keep in mind that, especially in a short sale, it is unlikely the bank will approve repairs that are not necessary to receiving a loan. So there may or may not be money for repairs in what the bank is willing to do. And obviously the seller doesn't have money for repairs, or we wouldn't be in this situation. So do not expect repairs, but you can always ask for them. Okay. And then we're going to shift the appraisal timeline as well. And we're going to shift it to being ordered 3 days following the date of the removal of the property inspection contingency. So you've had your property inspection, you've got your approvals, you've had your inspection, and it's taking a while to get things negotiated, and you finally got it negotiated. From the time that that PICRA is ratified, you now have 3 days to get the appraisal ordered. It doesn't have to happen within those 3 days, but you need to get it ordered. And keep in mind this large, bold paragraph that's outlined here. You're delaying the inspections and appraisal may impact the valuation because the bank had somebody go out and do a broker's price opinion, and they gave them the price based on that current market condition. If this takes 90 days and other things sell in that time frame, it could affect the value here, and we could end up starting over. But I still believe that the buyer is best protected in this situation if you do not do the inspection until after you have written approval, and if you do not order the appraisal until the complete PICRA is ratified. Because under number 4, in the event that the approvals are not obtained, expenses incurred by the buyer will not be reimbursed. So if the buyer says, I'm willing to take the risk, I know we may not get bank approval, I want to order my inspection, they pay for the inspection, they get all the repairs figured out, and then the bank denies the short sale, the buyer is out that money. There is nothing to be done. The buyer cannot get the money back from the bank or from the seller. So keep that in mind. Okay. And there is a chance that during the short sale process, a foreclosure could be initiated. If that happens, the seller needs to disclose it. And typically, knowing there is a contract and a short sale approval in process will forbear the foreclosure. They will put a hold on the foreclosure typically in that situation. Not always, but typically. Okay. And again, the brokerage fee is owed to the listing firm and selling firm. It's governed by our documents. So if you, as the listing agent, do not have that short sale compensation form, you're risking your commission. Okay, so that's short sales. Do not go off into the land of short sales on your own. Check with a mentor, check with me, make sure that you absolutely are aware of what you're getting into and what your buyer and or seller is getting into.